Okay, let's jump right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating character study from George R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, specifically looking at Duncan the Tall. And through him, we are going to look at what is arguably the ultimate paradox of human behavior. I'm talking about having immense, undeniable physical power, but zero internal belief to actually back it up. We're looking at a guy who is roughly 7 feet tall. He's almost preternaturally strong and universally respected by the people who cross his path. I mean, just to put his sheer size into perspective, this is a man who literally has to duck to get through tavern doorways. He absolutely dwarfs grown men. And yet, he moves through the world like he kind of doesn't believe he exists. It's a stunning look at what happens when your physical reality entirely outpaces your mental reality.
I mean, really think about that for a second. How are you 7 feet tall, but you still ask for permission to exist? It's just this glaring, almost painful disconnect. A man of this size, with this level of sheer physical capability, should command the room the literal millisecond he crosses the threshold. But he doesn't. He shrinks. He hesitates. He waits around for the nodding approval of lesser lords and guys who are frankly far weaker knights than he is. He's constantly bowing to this societal hierarchy that his very physical presence completely defies. The source material paints this incredible picture of a man who looks exactly like raw, unfiltered power, but fundamentally just doesn't feel like it.
Section 1. The Illusion of Power. Okay, let's dive into this, because this isn't just about some fictional knight. This is a profound breakdown of how we as humans actually perceive presence. When we juxtapose his external reality against his internal reality, the conflict becomes so incredibly clear. Just look at his external reality first. In real life, a guy like this, he commands immediate reactions. The source notes that women notice him instantly. Men respect him out of basic survival instinct. His physical presence alone carries absolute undeniable weight. He's got massive size, raw strength, unmatched capability. It's all right there on the surface. But then, look at the internal reality. Hesitation, minimizing himself. There's this lingering boyishness where he'll instinctively stare down at his oversized boots the second he's spoken to by royalty. While the whole world is basically ready to hand him the reins based purely on his physical stature, his internal hesitation actively repels his true potential. He's essentially fighting his own physical dominance from the inside out.
And that brings us to this absolute rock-solid truth. External presence does not create internal certainty. You can look the part all you want. You can have the broad shoulders, the perfectly tailored suit, the impressive resume, the immediate respect of your peers, but those external traits mean absolutely nothing if you don't have the mind to back them up. Because no matter how thick your armor is or how tall you stand, those things literally cannot shield a fragile self-image. Duncan is missing one absolutely critical component, and it neutralizes every single one of his physical advantages: self-recognition. Section 2. The Underclaimed Psychology. So what's actually happening beneath the surface here? Let's treat him like a clinical case study to figure out the specific state of mind driving this kind of chronic physical shrinking.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is the precise terminology. Duncan isn't insecure in the traditional loud way, right? We've all seen guys who are insecure. They overcompensate, they puff out their chests, they pick fights at the bar just to prove how tough they are. Duncan doesn't do any of that. He is what the source defines as underclaimed. Being underclaimed is the psychological state of not fully accepting who you are, what you bring to the table, or the impact you naturally have on the world around you. He is quite literally leaving his own immense power sitting unclaimed on the table.
And because he's so deeply underclaimed, we see these exact symptoms manifest physically in real time. Instead of commanding the space his body naturally occupies, which is a lot of space, he minimizes himself. He hesitates. He second-guesses his own gut instincts. He actively fights against his own physical reality by trying to fold his massive 7-foot frame into the background, like some nervous shadow. He's desperately hoping nobody notices the literal giant in the room. He's endlessly, relentlessly apologizing for the space he inherently takes up. So why does this happen? Well, identity is built on a very specific architecture. It's constructed from our past experiences, how other people treated us early on in our lives, and ultimately what we were allowed to believe about ourselves during those formative years. And if we look at Duncan's past, the puzzle pieces just snap together perfectly. He started out as a poor, starving street urchin in the slums of Flea Bottom. For years and years, he squired for this humble, aging hedge knight named Sir Arlen. And during all that time, he was treated as a clumsy, overgrown boy. He was explicitly told to keep his head down. So his brain is still operating on that outdated software, even though his physical hardware has completely upgraded into that of a giant. The tragic reality for Duncan, and honestly for a lot of people, is that even when your physical reality completely changes and evolves, your internal model often stays exactly the same. The outdated internal model survives. He still looks in the mirror and sees the awkward boy. He sees the unknown. He sees the guy who just isn't ready yet, despite standing 7 feet tall and holding all the capability in the world. Section 3, the magnetism of certainty. We need a pivot here, because to really get what Duncan is missing, we have to completely dismantle what we think true confidence actually looks like. Just look closely at this breakdown. Confidence is not loudness. It is not arrogance. It is certainly not frantically trying to impress the people around you. Confidence is accurate self-recognition. It is deciding your value for yourself. It is absolute ownership of your space and your capabilities. Deciding it yourself practically means you don't need to walk into a room and demand everyone look at you, which is what arrogance does, by the way. Instead, you walk in knowing precisely what you're worth, regardless of who happens to be looking. Duncan hasn't updated his self-image yet, so he's entirely missing all those crucial traits on the what confidence is side of the equation.
Let's have some real talk about this. We established earlier that a man of his incredible size would easily get attention, right? Women notice him, men respect him out of sheer self-preservation. But physical presence is only half the equation. Attraction, like true magnetic pull, isn't just physical presence. It requires certainty, direction, and ownership. Without those 3 things, you might get a passing glance, sure, but you won't have pull. You might get base-level respect, but you won't have magnetism. Physical presence merely opens the door. Unwavering certainty is what actually commands the room.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core trap Duncan falls right into. He's incredibly powerful, no doubt about it. But instead of simply deciding that for himself, he's constantly waiting for external validation to confirm it for him. He's literally waiting for a formal knighthood, this societal stamp of approval, to finally feel worthy. He doesn't realize his worth actually comes from his own actions, his character, and his immense capability. He desperately wants the world to tell him he's powerful before he's willing to act like it.
Section 4, stop outsourcing your identity. So how do we actually fix this? How does a person transition from being chronically underclaimed to fully owning their reality? Let's shift gears from understanding the problem into the actionable methodology to correct it.
Let's move to and see how this builds, step by step. What should he have done? And keep in mind, this is absolutely not about becoming arrogant. It's about alignment. Step 1, claim his space. He needs to walk into a room, whether it's a royal pavilion or a crowded, dirty tavern, with the internal monologue of, I belong here, instead of hovering nervously near the doorway. Step 2, speak with finality. Drop the maybes. When he speaks to a lord or a peer, it needs to be, this is what it is, rather than trailing off into a nervous question. Step 3, accept his impact. He has to stop acting like he's invisible when he is clearly the largest presence in the entire room. If you step forward and the crowd parts, own it. And step 4, stop outsourcing his identity. No more waiting for a piece of parchment or a tap on the shoulder from some king. No more checking with others, no more doubting. The wait for external permission has to end right now. Section 5, assume before you prove. This brings us to a macro-level realization that applies far, far beyond just this one character. This applies directly to the permissions you might be waiting for in your own life.
Here is the really rare angle that the source material points out, and this is absolutely key, so listen closely. Many men, and people in general really, don't actually lack confidence. What they lack is permission to be who they already are. They're endlessly waiting for a partner, or waiting for society, or waiting for some specific arbitrary benchmark of success to finally hand them the permission slip to exist in their full power. But that external permission, it never comes. It literally never comes.
So the crucial point is right here. Confidence isn't earned. It's assumed and then reinforced. I really want you to let that sink in. You don't become confident after you get the results. You have to become confident before you have the proof. You assume the position, you adopt the mindset, you assume the identity, and then the real world eventually reinforces it based on exactly how you're showing up every single day.
Ultimately, Duncan's real journey in this story was never about becoming physically stronger. He was already a giant. He already had the capability. His true journey was simply about accurately recognizing what he already was, just seeing himself clearly, and then moving accordingly. It was about closing that vast, gaping gap between the monumental 7-foot reality that everyone else saw and the small, hesitant internal boy he was clinging to.
He had to align his internal belief with his undeniable external reality.
Because the stark, undeniable truth of the matter is this: the world already responds to what you are. Your presence, your capability, your strength, it's already out there. It's already happening. The only question left to answer is, have you accepted it yet?